Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into the broadcast. My name is Jesse Hildebrand. I'm with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and what our organization does is connect scientists and explorers all around the world with classrooms usually through live, free, interactive broadcasts. We do about 30, 40 of these a month with the coolest people on planet Earth, all of which go to our YouTube channel, so you can explore like 4,000 past shows right there. Now, for today, the Star Network of Libraries, of which you are all a part, graciously reached out and asked us if we would help bring some really cool people to help supplement their incredible Flight Path series of resources. So in collaboration with the folks at the HHMI Tangled Bank Studios, they've made a really cool website where you can explore all sorts of cool things about birds and bird migration specifically. And so to make this topic come alive, we have partnered with the amazing folks at the Vermont Institute for Natural Science. Now they rescue, rehabilitate, and re-release injured birds. They keep bird ambassadors on site to highlight the wide and amazing world of raptors, birds of prey, my very favorite birds on planet Earth. So without further ado, I'm going to zip it. You're not here for me. We are going to talk to the amazing Maya at VINS to highlight our bird ambassadors and all the cool work they do. And so without further ado, Maya, welcome back in, and so nice to have you back again.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name's Maya. I'm an environmental educator at the Vermont Institute of Natural Science, or just VINS for short. We have a little nature center here in Quechee, Vermont, where, again, we have the mission to motivate and inspire people to care about the environment, right? The beautiful place that we call home. So we do lots of different things. As Jesse mentioned, we have a bird hospital where we take in injured, orphaned, abandoned wild birds brought to us by folks like yourselves who may encounter a bird in need during your day-to-day life, anything from the teeniest, tiniest little ruby-throated hummingbird to the biggest eagle, and every shape and size of bird in between. And we also try to release those birds, obviously, as soon as they are physically capable and recovered from those injuries. But sometimes those birds don't always heal 100%, and they're left with some permanent disability that would make it impossible to survive on their own in the wild, whether that's an injury to their wing, to their eye, or something else. We kind of give them a career change of sorts. In exchange for all the good stuff, they get to stay here as ambassadors for their species and some of the birds we're going to meet today to help us do education, to teach all of you about the fun, amazing world of animals and birds specifically. Now, not just any old birds, we have specifically birds of prey. Now that means I don't have any chickadees or, ducks or woodpeckers backstage. I have raptors. Birds of prey, anything like an eagle, a hawk, a falcon, an owl, a vulture, right? All these amazing, what we think of, predatory birds. So many of these birds have some traits in common with each other, even though they're not very closely related. But we're going to meet an ambassador first, who is the perfect introduction to the raptor basics. What makes them different from some of those other kinds of birds that I met, right? Because penguins, right, they eat fish exclusively. They're also a predatory bird, but they're not a raptor. So let's learn why with our first ambassador. So I'll be right back.
All right, we'll leave you to it, and we'll see our first ambassador in just a second. I want to stress, if you want to learn more about VINS at the end of today's broadcast, they have a great social media presence. They're online at vinsweb.org. And if you want to check out the Flight Path series of resources, it is right here. I'm going to be sharing those and other resources in the chat on YouTube and the chat on StreamYard throughout today's broadcast. And if there's anything that you missed throughout today's show, have your librarian email me. We'll get you all those resources when the program is done. There's so much to explore and discover on birds. They are really quite spectacular animals. Now, it looks like Maya's back with our first giant ambassador. So take us away and tell us more.
All right. So this may be actually what you envisioned when I said the word raptor and when you thought of birds, right? Kind of a relatively large bird who's got all the makings of an amazing predator. And I'll give you a little visual hint first. But this specific raptor is named for a physical feature you can use to identify her, and it's on her tail. Yes, this is indeed the red-tailed hawk. So our red-tailed hawk, of course, has red on her tail. It's in her name, and it's how you can generally identify red-tailed hawks in the wild. But where in the wild might you see a red-tailed hawk? If you live in North America, anywhere. Literally anywhere. They are a generalist species, meaning they live in tons of different habitats, from forests to prairies to the tundra to the desert to the coast to wetlands, the mountains, everywhere in between, you might encounter a red-tailed hawk. And so, because they're not very picky about where they live, they're also not very picky about the things they might want to eat for dinner. So, bird of prey, that implies that this is a predator. She has to have the tools needed to find, catch, and eat other animals to survive. So, she's got all the perfect tools. The first is maybe how this bird is going to find her dinner. These guys generally perch and sit up high, maybe in the trees or some other structure, and keep their eyes out for something to eat. Hawks and our other raptors, they kind of have an intense forward-facing gaze that allows them to see a lot of details at long distances. So, for me and you, what that means is if we could look through her eyes, we would be able to read our favorite books from across a football field. That is ridiculously far away for some very, very tiny details. So she can easily spot maybe the fuzzy butt of a bunny rabbit or a squirrel or a mouse or something scurrying on the ground below while she's sitting up high in the trees. And once she spots dinner, she's going to swoop down with those big wings and reach out to grab it with her talons. Those long curved claws at the ends of each toe are called talons. And they're not just sharp and pointy. Her feet are incredibly strong for her size. Now, me personally, I've measured my grip strength, so how hard I can squeeze in my hand as hard as possible. I can do about 70 pounds per square inch of pressure, which that's pretty darn good for me. The strongest of us humans might be able to get a little over 100 pounds per square inch of pressure. But this hawk has us beat at over 200 pounds per square inch of pressure in those talons. So when she squeezes down on dinner, it's not likely to get away. And that's actually where that word raptor comes from. It's a trait of all of our birds of prey, is how they catch their food as they use their feet. So she has incredibly strong, incredibly sharp feet, but then she's got to eat it. And like I said, these guys are not very picky, so they'll eat anything like small rodents, small little mammals, maybe even a few small birds if she's quick enough and quiet enough. And even things like snakes and lizards or amphibians like frogs and salamanders are also on the menu. Pretty much anything small enough to fit in her talons, she might want to eat for dinner. And so if she catches something, though, on the big end of her menu, like a bunny rabbit, she isn't going to take out a fork and a knife, right? She doesn't use tools in that way. And she also doesn't have teeth like me and you to chew food. Instead, she has her beak. That curved point at the end of her beak is what allows her to tear apart large prey into bite-sized pieces. And then she can enjoy the rest of her dinner. And so those are the basic raptor adaptations, the tools that they use to be predators in their environment, is their keen eyes to find food, their sharp talons to catch it, and then that curved beak to be able to eat it. So she's got all of these perfect tools, but this year specifically is Bloomfield. She came to us from the town of Bloomfield here in Vermont. We name all of our ambassador animals after where they came to us from. And she came to us because someone very kindly was driving down the road and saw a young hawk on the side of the road and clearly injured. Her left wing was kind of sticking out at a weird angle and was not flying away from the cars driving past. So they did the right thing. They pulled over safely, got out of the car, walked up and said, "Yep, this bird is injured and needs help," and called us, are their local wildlife rehabilitators who are licensed and trained to care for injured wildlife. We walked them through what to do to safely pick up and carry and transport and contain Bloomfield, brought her to our bird hospital, where she received all of the treatment possible to fix the broken bone in her left wing. Now, birds are incredibly lightweight. I know you probably are impressed with me holding this ginormous bird on my glove for all this time, but she only weighs about 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds at most in the wintertime. So she's actually pretty lightweight, and that's because her bones are hollow. But hollow bones, they heal really, really fast, which is great, but they can also heal really fast in the wrong position. So if it heals at a kind of a funky angle, she may not ever regain her ability to fly. And so that's what happened to Bloomfield. That bone set and mended and healed as best as we possibly could get it, but she never got her full flight ability back. And so she's been an ambassador for her species here with us ever since. And this year, she's 29 years old.
Wow. How amazing is that? Way to go, Bloomfield. And I want to harp on something for a second, because the 2 to 3 pounds thing is totally wild. Like, this is, I think, something that when we work with kids are most blown away about. And I think it's true for adults too. Like, she looks like she weighed 20, 30 pounds. Like, she's the size of like a mid-sized dog, basically. I know. Yeah. Is there a bird that's much bigger than her? Like, do you get birds that are larger than Bloomfield? But she seems gigantic.
Yeah. Sometimes we bring her out for program and I ask audiences, like, what kind of raptor do you think this is? And sometimes she's very complimented. She gets golden eagle as an answer. And I'm like, whoa, she's very complimented. You think she's that big, but golden eagles are quite a bit larger. They can weigh in, adult females, at sometimes over 12 pounds, which is huge for a bird. But if you think about it, a gallon jug of water or milk or something, it's about 8 pounds. So hold an 8-pound weight on the end of your arm, and that's like having an eagle sitting out there.
How about that? Thank you for the deep dive. That's very, very cool. You talked about her vision. So is that the main sense they rely on? Are there other things that they use to hunt? I mean, we've talked about smell a little bit as well. Anything that you want to dive in on?
Yeah, so her eyesight is primarily what she's using to not only find food, but also navigate her space, right? To look at the world around her. And that's actually where humans and raptors are kind of similar. We also rely very much on our eyes. She can also hear things, of course. She has ear holes in the side of her head, very similar to her dinosaur ancestors. So she can hear the calls of other red-tailed hawks, right? That's why they make that long, beautiful, screeching sound that is often dubbed over bald eagles. But it is actually a red-tailed hawk. And she has a sense of smell. It's just not very important to her. But most birds don't have a great sense of smell, exception being turkey vultures.
Raising my hand here, what do bald eagles sound like if they have to use red-tailed hawk calls? I've actually never heard this before, so I'm fascinated.
Yeah, so any video, right, you've seen, right, that has a bald eagle flying and a beautiful call, it's a red-tailed hawk call. Bald eagles, I've heard it very funnily described as a mix between a seagull and squeaky tennis shoes. It's kind of a stuttering, very high-pitched chirping kind of sound. I can't mimic it very well, but look it up at home, I promise.
Thank you so much. Westport, you guys are right at the computer. If you want, I can come to you for a live question. Yes? What do you think? Yeah? Cool. Come on in. Okay. Take us away.
Tell me your question. Come on up.
Question, comment, whatever.
Come on. You're going to have to speak in a big voice.
No hurry. You're good. Lots of time. Hi.
Come on. What's your question? Oh, you don't have one anymore? Okay, say your comment. What do you want to say?
Not rescue.
What?
Around here, there's another rescue center.
Oh, around here we have a rescue center as well. He wants to let you know.
How cool is that? Where I grew up, they have some rescue centers as well. They're all over the United States and Canada, and it's really special that so many people like Maya get to work to take care of animals. Thank you so much for the comment, man. That's awesome. Well, we are going to let our Bloomfield go so we can meet our second animal ambassador, because time flies and you're having fun. But I'm going to highlight some resources on birds that we can do before we meet our second bird. So I'm going to do this in between both birds. Please do keep those questions coming. You can share in the chat. Chambly, Wildemar, our Westport crew, anyone else joining in on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you throughout the broadcast. I'm going to highlight just a few resources that, if you're keen to explore birds close to home or around the world, are just incredible tools. So notably, iNaturalist.org, allaboutbirds.org, and eBird.org. As you may have gathered from the fact there are 3 at the tips of my fingertips, birds are a very popular topic. So if you want to get out and explore, find out what bird you might have seen flying overhead, those are 3 incredible websites, apps that you can use to do that. There's pretty much anything you could ever want to know or find about birds on those 3. So if you want to check in on a call that you've heard, or find out what something looked like, or see if there's been like a bald eagle spotted near you, those are all options with those tools, and I can't recommend them enough. Now, I must admit, of the 3 birds, this is my favorite of the 3 birds. We'll see if you feel the same way, but it looks like we're back with an owl.
Yeah, exactly. So many of you could probably pretty easily tell me just by looking at this bird that he is an owl. And that's because he has some pretty distinctive characteristics that make him easily recognizable as this particular group of birds. But first, he is specifically the barred owl. And if you live here in North America and live in the eastern half of the continent or in southern Canada, you may regularly encounter barred owls if you live around forests. This is a forest-dwelling owl specifically. So unlike Bloomfield, our red-tailed hawk, our barred owl here, he specifically lives amongst the trees. And that's why he's a barred owl. And I always enunciate barred, B-A-R-R-E-D, because he has chocolate bars on his chest that help him to blend in with trees and the bark of the trees that he's sitting in. So he's got some camouflage going in, helping him blend in a little bit. But very famously, owls are particularly active at night, or many of them, not all, there are some exceptions. But barred owls are a nocturnal, generally species of owl, and so they have some adaptations, some modifications even, to those raptor tools that we talked about with Bloomfield. You can see, of course, the giant eyes on the front of his face. So Bloomfield also has pretty big eyes, but owl's eyes are ginormous, and they take up about 2/3 of the space in his skull. So if you had eyeballs as big as his, they would be about the size of your fist. That is huge. That is ridiculously giant. And so having big eyes allows you to see better at night. He doesn't have like nocturnal vision that you might see in the TV or with goggles on. He also doesn't have X-ray vision, but he can see using moonlight or starlight alone to navigate his forest home so that he doesn't accidentally fly into a tree or a branch. So he's got huge eyes to help him find his way around. And so big eyes, you can find tons of different things, but what is he looking for specifically? Lots of different things. Similar to the red-tailed hawk, he is also kind of a generalist in his diet. He's not super picky. He, of course, eats lots of small rodents. Pretty much every predator wants to eat a mouse. Very few of them will refuse. But also things like reptiles, like little nocturnal snakes and lizards and frogs, right? Think about all the vernal pools up here in the northern half of the continent and all the frogs singing in those pools. He's not afraid to get his toes a little wet. So he eats tons of different things, but is mostly active at night. Now, our barred owls, they actually tough it out in the coldest regions of their range year-round. They are not migratory. They don't leave. They don't fly south for the winter time when times get tough. They stick it out in their home territory pretty much their whole lives. So while our barred owls are up here, say in Vermont in the winter time, there's usually quite a bit of snow in the winter. And those small rodents that are still active throughout the winter that he might want to eat, they're not exactly sitting on top of snowbanks waiting for predators to come by and eat them. They are usually hiding underneath the snow. And as I mentioned, he doesn't have X-ray vision. He can't see through things. So instead of just relying on his eyes, like many other raptors, our owls also use their hearing. Now, just like Bloomfield, he's got 2 big holes in the side of his head, just back and behind his eyes. But in order to catch sounds and make sure that he can actually receive the sounds coming by him, he has to have ears, right? But he doesn't have those feathers up here. He instead has different kind of feathers that act like the skin we have right here, but instead there is a ring of stiff feathers on each half of his face that are bigger than the entire front of his head. So imagine for a moment that your ears were bigger than the entire front of your face. Imagine how good your hearing would be. Owls specifically have some of the most sensitive hearing in the animal kingdom. Measured by scientists, some of our owls could hear something as quiet as little mouse footsteps from 75 feet away. That is ridiculously quiet. That is so quiet. They don't say quiet as a mouse for no reason. And I personally have never heard mouse footsteps from any distance, let alone 70 feet away. So he can pretty easily hear the scurrying of a little mouse or a vole through a foot of snow while he's sitting 30 feet up at the top of a tree. Now, while he's hunting, he's using his eyes and his ears. But while he's flying, right, because he's not walking around on the ground to find dinner, he's up in the trees, he's flying from place to place, listening carefully for anything going by. That means that he also has to have quiet flight. Because if you've ever done this, right, if you're a bird and you're flapping your wings next to your ears, you can hear the whoosh, whoosh of your hand, right? You maybe have heard a bird fly by you because of the sound of their wings moving through the air. Owls have nearly silent flight, and they can fly very slowly. Their wings are quite wide and broad to allow them to kind of glide very easily. But even when their wings do move through the air, their feathers are very flexible. And on the edges of the front and back edges, it's like fringed, like a little comb of eyelashes sticking off the edges that muffle the sound as they move through the air. So even when he flaps his wings, there's almost no sound made at all. So you've probably never heard an owl fly very often. But he's got some pretty amazing superpowers. Being a nocturnal predator, right, he has to modify some of his way of life to make sure that he can still find enough food even when it's dark outside. So this barred owl specifically, this is Heartland. He's from the town of Heartland here in Vermont. And he has an interesting story as to why he is here with us. He was actually just a little fuzzball from the nest. He looked like a dryer lint ball with eyes and feet. And when owls are young, they start to explore the nest, right? They kind of open their eyes, their feathers start to get a little bit bigger, stiffer, right? Starting to grow in some of those flight feathers. So they start flapping their wings, walking around the nest, exploring while mom and dad are away. And they're also pretty clumsy because they're young. And so they might fall out of the nest. They might fall from a branch and go down to the ground. They're pretty bouncy, and they actually are very good at climbing. They can actually use their talons and their beak to help them climb back up the tree where mom and dad are waiting for them with dinner. So Heartland here had found himself down on the ground outside of his nest, totally fine, but some humans had encountered him. There was a family who saw a young owl on the ground and said, "Oh no, this owl needs help. What do we do?" And they weren't sure. So they picked him up and they brought him home. They let him live in their living room. They're like, "Oh, just a couple days." And then those couple days turned into a week before they pretty quickly realized that having a wild animal in your house is not the best idea. For birds here in the US, it's federally illegal. And also, he is a young owl. He has a very specific dietary needs. He has a very specific environment that he would need to grow up in to be really able to survive in the wild. And so these people figured out that, our living room's probably not been the best place for him. So they brought him to us. They realized that there's a bird hospital right down the road. So they brought him here. We housed him with another of other young barred owls that we had in our care at the time. But unfortunately for Heartland, that week was just enough time for him to realize that he might actually be a human. When birds are young, they often go through a time called imprinting. It's a stage of life when they're in the nest that they need to look and listen to who's feeding them to realize that's who I'm going to be when I grow up, right? That's mom and dad. I must be a tiny little barred owl. But for Heartland, he saw humans for a period of time, giving him food, probably telling him he was adorable, right? Letting them sit on the couch. So he came to the conclusion that he must be a little baby human. And so that's why he is here with us. And because of his behavior, because of his lack of fear of humans, and really he doesn't really know how to be a barred owl. He didn't have parents to learn from. He is non-releasable. And so because of that, he's an amazing ambassador for his species. But let it be a lesson, right? If you ever find a wild animal in need of help, don't take it home. Your living room is probably not the best place for that animal to recover from its injuries. So call someone who knows what they're doing, right? Who can help you not accidentally harm the animal you're trying to help.
Like Vins, which you can do with this website below. Heartland is the cutest of human owls I've ever seen in my life. And by the way, something being federally illegal is one of the only times it's ever been mentioned in the history of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So thank you very much for that in our broadcast today. We've got a bunch of questions to begin, and please do share more in the chat, folks. Our Missouri folks really loved Bloomfield, so we'll see what their verdict is in Heartland in just a minute. We did not talk about owls turning their head. Can we share a little bit about how far they might be able to turn their head, maybe dispel some myths today, Maya?
Yeah, absolutely. So because owls have those big eyes, it means that those eyes are actually held in place by bone. There's a ring of bone around each of his eyes that holds them fixed forward, meaning when he wants to look around, he has to turn his entire head. So when he turns his head, it kind of looks very dramatic. They do actually have longer necks than me and you, despite all the feathers covering them. And it is a myth that they can turn their heads 360 degrees all the way around. That would require some form of possession out in nature. But in owls, they can do up to 270 degrees, which is ridiculously far. Most of the time, they could do up to 180 regularly, just because it's a lot easier to go from here to there rather than going all the way around. But yeah, they have longer necks, and that allows them to turn their heads far, but not quite that far.
I mean, you can look up an owl skeleton, but I'd also encourage folks to look up a featherless owl, which is one of the most uncanny things in nature you've ever seen in your entire life. Is not a natural occurrence. They shouldn't be featherless like that. But you certainly get a sense of their strange body and how much feather that they actually have on them, and it is unbelievable. So for owls, I said in our last broadcast, I've never seen an owl in person outside of like a zoo or a nature center. If I were to go looking for owls, what would you recommend? How would I go about finding owls near me?
Yeah, it can be pretty tricky, right? They are usually well camouflaged. They're out at a time of day we aren't good at seeing things. So trying to get to know your local areas, your local natural areas as much as you can. So go out, observe how many trees, how many holes in those trees. There are many small owls that use those cavities as homes year round. Get to know some of the big branches that are standing dead and are open, right? If there's a lot of leaves on those branches, they might have a harder time seeing or listening down below. And so they might not use those spots. But if there's a nice dead branch somewhere, perfect for observing the ground below, there might sometimes be animals sitting there waiting for something tasty to go by. But getting to know your area, looking up what species of owls you have in your area, and going out at times of the year when they're very vocal. So, right, barred owls, I like to joke that sometimes they're called barred owls, the musical bard, because they make 40 different vocalizations. That is a ton. The most common one is the woo, 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 woo call, the who cooks for you. They are very loud. They're very vocal during the time when they are trying to establish their territory, where they're going to raise their young that spring. It's usually in kind of late winter when you most often hear them vocalize. So look up what owls you have in your area, learn their calls, and see if you can hear any in your area. And then you have a better chance of knowing where they are and where you might see them.
Maya, that was the best animal call I've ever heard in a broadcast in my life. Bravo. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good.
I apologize.
Something fell in front of us and he's
okay. I want to note too, so it's not like owls are rare. We did a program with the Prince Edward Point Bird Observatory in Ontario, and in the peak owl season, they catch them in mist nets and they weigh them and they measure them and do stuff. They were catching 300 owls a day. Yeah. So like unbelievable how many of these birds there are, even if we don't readily see them like we would something like a chickadee or the others that you mentioned at the beginning. So
absolutely.
I'm really glad we mentioned this. We're going to take just one more owl question, and then we'll let Heartland go back and rest. Our Davies County Library folks want to know, how much does the barred owl weigh? So you talked about 2 to 3 pounds for Bloomfield. What's the deal with Heartland?
Heartland is kind of on the larger side for a male barred owl. He's kind of just under 2 pounds. 2.5, maybe 3 for a huge female barred owl. Might be within their range, but usually around 2, even sometimes 1.5 pounds for a smaller male.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Maya. Well, we are going to say farewell to Heartland, and we'll get ready to meet our third and final animal ambassador. Third time's the charm. We've got so many great birds to you today, we can hardly stand it. I'm going to highlight some cool books for you now. So I highlighted some cool oceanic online resources earlier. We did ocean programs earlier today as an organization, so it's stuck in my head. But through the whole broadcast series with Vince, we've been highlighting An Immense World, which is an amazing book about animals in general. That is a big featurette on birds throughout. The Life of Birds by David Attenborough is both an amazing book and a documentary series. I can't encourage it enough. It is the gold standard of nature series on birds of all time. The Thing with Feathers by Noah Stryker is like a great deep dive into the biology of birds. And then finally, H is for Hawk is a great book that I've read personally. An amazing memoir that relates to a woman coming back into her own life by becoming a falconer of sorts. So do check that out. Some really cool resources. And you're all at libraries, so you can all head right now when you're done the broadcast and pick up any of those great titles. Last but not least, vinsweb.org and our amazing Flight Path Resource Hub. I'm going to put these in the chat for everyone in just a second again, but Maya is back with our third, final, and tiniest ambassador. Hey, Maya.
All right. So we've met hawk, we've met an owl, there are many kinds of raptors, and this one is an example of the smallest species of falcon here in the Americas. This is the American kestrel. So despite looking very colorful, being relatively small, he is not a songbird. In fact, he's a predator of many kinds of songbirds. He is a falcon, which are famous across the world for being incredibly fast and their ability to fly through the air in pursuit of their prey. So he's got all the makings of a little speeder. He's got long pointed wings shaped kind of like a jet airplane, or should I say, where do you think we got the idea for jet airplanes? But from falcons, because of the sleek aerodynamic shape of their body. It allows even a bird like him, who only weighs about as much as a deck of cards, to dive through the air at 70 miles per hour. That's faster than your car should be going down most highways. And so he can go really, really fast. And your first question about why in the world does this bird need to go so fast lies in what he likes to eat. These birds live in open habitats. So think a grassland, a field, a pasture, a prairie, a meadow, big wide open grassy spaces all across many parts of North America. You might encounter kestrels on the hunt for things like bugs, crickets, grasshoppers, cicadas, right? Dragonflies. He can even snag right out of the air. He's so fast. He'll also eat small rodents, things like mice and voles, of course, because why wouldn't he? But he'll also eat things like other birds as well, and a kind of falcon specialty in many parts of the world. But for raptors like him, he has that speed to allow him to catch up to his aerial prey. So while he's diving through the air after his prey, he has to make sure that, one, he can still see, and two, he can still breathe while he's moving through the air that fast. If any of you have been outside on a really windy day or in the car with the windows rolled down while it's going kind of fast, you'll notice that it's kind of hard to keep your eyes open in the wind, right? The wind blows in and kind of dries them out, so you have to blink and squint a lot. If he had to do that while he was diving, he might crash into something, or he might lose track of where his prey is ahead of him. So he's got built-in aviator goggles. All of our birds actually have an extra eyelid that goes side to side underneath the outer two, and it is, in falcons, perfectly clear, totally transparent, so that he can see through it, even while it's covering his eye to protect it from the wind. So he's got little built-in aviator goggles to help him to see while he's moving through the air. But in addition, if you've ever been outside, it's a nictitating membrane. Well, if you've been outside on that windy day and had the wind take your breath away, sometimes when the wind is going by very quickly, either into your nose too fast or sometimes so fast that you can't breathe in very well, you know that it can be very difficult, right? And if he was moving through the air at 70 miles per hour, he doesn't want air coming into his lungs at 70 miles per hour. He might explode. So instead, he has a little bone in the middle of his nostrils, or his nares at the top of his beak. That is a little projection. It just sticks out a little bit in the middle of his nose. And at the base, it kind of spirals around a little, so that when wind and air hit it, it goes in, but it slows down as it goes around this bone. And so he can still breathe and see while he's moving fast. And we humans thought this was so incredible that we designed many of our aircraft after these adaptations in falcons. You've seen at the front of a plane engine, there's that little cone in the middle. It's not just for decoration. It's actually designed after his nostrils, his nares, those little bones in his nose that help slow the air as it goes into the engine. So falcons have some pretty amazing adaptations that help them to fly fast, to catch fast prey. He's quite the ferocious hunter. But this here specifically, this little American kestrel, his name is Westford. He's from the town of Westford here in Vermont. And he actually has a slightly similar story to Heartland. He is also imprinted on humans, but we don't know who, we don't know why, because Westford here was anonymously dropped off at the doorstep of a wildlife rehabilitator. Someone else in the state, in the town of Westford, who also cares for injured wild birds, opened her door one afternoon and there was an unmarked box on who immediately, upon seeing a human, this giant potential predator, landed on her head and started begging for food, going peep, peep, peep. Baby kestrels do. No. And so this little kestrel here immediately flagged as that's very strange behavior, right? They should see us as a huge predator, not a potential source of food. So Westford here was pretty quickly transferred to us down in Quechee, where we fully assessed that, yes, he was irreversibly imprinted on humans. So we don't know who, we don't know why. Maybe it was similar to Heartland and it was a family who really found him and wanted to care for him as best they could and quickly realized that they're not cut out for that. So Westford here is an amazing ambassador for his species. meaning that he thinks of all of us and everyone he meets as giant kestrels, or maybe he's just a very small human. But that's our little American kestrel, Westford. You guys have any questions, kestrel questions?
Westford is amazing, and a big thank you for all three of our incredible bird ambassadors today, Maya. This has been so much fun. We have a carryover owl question before we dive in with Westford, which is, are owl feathers waterproof? And in general, can you speak to bird waterproof featherdom?
Yeah. So all birds preen their feathers. They clean them and keep them nice in line, right? They make sure that they're all in the right place because they're very important for flight and also protecting their skin. So just like hair and fur in mammals, birds have feathers. And so they all have feathered oil gland at the base of their tail that they use to preen their feathers to keep them somewhat waterproof. Owls are kind of interesting in that their feathers are generally very fuzzy. Because they have that silent flight, their feathers are very, very fuzzy. They have all this fine little frayed texture, which keeps them quiet and keeps them warm in cold climates. But it also means that they can get waterlogged pretty fast. So most of our owls aren't very aquatic, though there are fish owls across the world who do go fishing in small streams. But birds like ducks and penguins and aquatic birds, they have waterproofing way more intensely than our non-aquatic birds do. So if he dove into the water, he'd also get waterlogged and be very difficult for him to fly before drying. But
ducks, they are not. I am going to harp on something for a quick second because you mentioned fish owls, and everyone should know the Blackiston or Blakiston fish owl. I've never heard it said out loud, but it's like one of the jauntiest, weirdest, coolest birds in the world, and everyone should know its name, and now you all do. So there you are.
It's also the largest owl.
I was going to say, I thought that was the case, but I was going to ask you to confirm that. Thank you.
Yeah.
For our three birds, do the males and females look different? We haven't had this question yet.
Yeah. So for a lot of raptors specifically, so our birds of prey, most species, they look identical. Outside of sometimes body size, generally females are larger than males on average, but there's an overlap, of course. Generally, they look the same. Kestrels are one of the exceptions. Male kestrels like Westford here, he's got that beautiful slate blue on his wings, and his tail has this wide black band and a kind of clean dark orange. That is characteristic of a male American kestrel. Females would be entirely that beautiful cinnamon red color, and their tail would have a lot more bars and stripes all the way down. And their chest is usually a little bit streakier than it would be in a male. So there's slight differences in their plumage, their coloration, but it's not very common in raptors.
Thank you very much, Maya. Cool. And then again, deep dive on a broader slate of birds. That's awesome. Would either of our other birds, and we could cover his ears if you want, eat Westford? Like if the barred owl or a red-tailed hawk ran into him, what would be the outcome of that?
Yeah, so being this small, he is not the top of his food chain. He does have to worry about other larger predators that might want to turn him into dinner. Owls and large hawks like red tails, they're not very good at catching other birds. He is really fast. He is very, very keen at keeping his eyes out for potential predators. So their chances of success for catching him would be very, very slim out in the wild. But for bird hunting specialists like other falcons and things like Cooper's hawks, kind of their common backyard bird feeder, they would be able to catch kestrels somewhat commonly. But of course, they have their defenses, and one of them is the tiny little face on the back of his head. It kind of looks like a little jack-o'-lantern face, but it's meant to be false eyes to make him fool a potential predator into thinking, oh, I can't hunt him. He's looking right at me. He's just going to see me and fly away. They hopefully give him time to actually see the predator.
So many animals have the false eye or false face thing on their bodies. It's just one of the coolest things you'll find just throughout the entire animal kingdom, in the water, on land, in the sky. Such a neat tactic and so cool to see on Westford. So another thing we might have to close Westford's ears for, do you have a favorite bird at Fins, Maya?
Yeah, it's a pretty common question I get. Usually it's like, what's your favorite bird ever? Or what's your favorite bird that you work with? And I can never provide a straight answer. I pick a different one every single time because every bird I work with is an individual. They're completely unique in every way. But I have some fun things. So one of the species that I get to work with that I think is the most unique is a rough-legged hawk. They're an Arctic species of bird that many of us may not commonly see unless you live in the Arctic or the northern parts of the States in the wintertime. But they're really, really cool. They're amazing. They're beautiful. But I like the challenge of working with some of our other birds, like our owls, who have a hard time kind of focusing in the same way that our hawks and falcons do, because they have this additional sense, like their hearing, that kind of is a little bit of a distraction. It makes some things a little bit harder for them. And sometimes I like the challenge of kind of finding new ways to work with these birds in this way that we do with them.
Special. Thank you so much, Maya. Man, time flies when you're having fun. We are nearing the end of the broadcast. I know we can take questions all day long, so I'm going to encourage again, everybody, vinsweb.org. Check them out on social media to learn more. If you want to see more on migration and birds in general, the Flight Path resource with StarNet is amazing. So much to explore and discover there. Before we wrap up and say farewell to our audience, Missouri, California, Georgia, Connecticut, and beyond, is there any final message about the work you do with Arid Vins before we say goodbye?
Yeah. So I know we met a lot of cool birds today. And if you already are interested in birds, fantastic. If you're just starting to get interested in maybe seeing some of the animals that live around you, like maybe the invisible owls in your backyard, it's a great way to get out there, go be part of the environment, feel like you're a part of something, is learning a little bit more about some of the plants and animals that you share your home with. So I always encourage people, get outside, be curious, ask questions, right? Find out more about this beautiful place where we live.
Yeah. It's so many of us know the TV shows, the movies that are out right now, the brands, the things that are going on, and very few of us can name the birds, the trees, everything else that are close to home. So it's so easy to go explore. Again, some of those apps I highlighted earlier are broad and beyond birds, so you can really explore a little bit of everything. Can't encourage you to get outdoors enough. It's a magical way to explore the world, to look for wildlife around you, and I love it as our final message. Maya, thank you so much for joining us for this back-to-back broadcast series in partnership with libraries across the U.S. You guys are amazing. No one better than librarians, so thank you for all you do. If you're a library patron, go check out a book, go hug a librarian. You have our permission. And with that, we will say farewell. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone, and bye for now, guys.